Just recording a video in regards to the concepts when it comes to playing a guard game from the bottom, obviously, because guard is mostly from the bottom, it being open guard or closed guard. We have three major areas of the guard. First one being offensive guard, the second part being defensive guard, and the third level being the escapes. So let me just go over those in order. The first one, offensive guard, is dictated. It could be that you're on your back or you're sitting on your butt. It could be an open or closed guard. It could be that you have your legs wrapped around your opponent. It's just that you're setting up the ability to either have attacks or have sweeps. And having an offensive guard is dictated by there being a few caveats, and one caveat is that your center lines are in line with each other, so meaning your spine is in alignment with their spine. They're straight in front of you, they're not off to the side. The next one being you have 4 points of contact. If you have 4 points of contact, you have offensive guard, meaning it could be that you have collar sleeve, it could be that you've got a closed guard, you've got your legs wrapped around and you're holding on the lapel. You could be, if you're playing a no-gi game, it could be an overhook, underhook, head control. It could be a leg entanglement sort of thing. It could be that you've got a De La Riva or you're playing butterflies. These sort of positions are dictated by needing to have 4 points of contact. If you don't have 4 points of contact, then you're not playing an offensive guard. And the other one, obviously, you won't be playing an offensive guard if you are not aligned. If it's a sort of a really open situation where they're standing back and they're right in front of you, guard can be dictated, an offensive guard could be dictated by the fact that you have them between your legs. So meaning that your center lines are lined up and they're off to they're right in front of you. Anytime they change those angles and move off to the side, if you're just sitting there with no grips, you can always just move. So this kind of fits into a defensive guard in some regards, but it's more of an offensive because they're not really passing and you're not really got any control yet, and it's up to you to be able to get control. So the next level is defensive guard. So defensive guard, so you have to use, the caveats for that is that anytime you're in offensive guard and you lose any point of contact, so you go from 4 to 3, or you lose controls, let's say you're playing 3 points of contact and the other one could be on the ground or whatever, you have to make sure that you go into defensive guard. So if you're offensive guard, you lose your points of contact, or your opponent moves, you have to go into defensive guard, meaning they move off your center line, off to the side, or they start getting into that sort of past into that hip space. You're now having to play a defensive guard. So one of the big things of doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to understand exactly when you should be switching from offensive guard, when you should be attacking, sweeping, and submitting, to when you should be in defensive guard. And the caveat is if you don't have points of contact or they're starting to misalign their body, they're starting to get out of alignment from you. If that's the case, then you go directly to defensive guard. Now, defensive guard, that is you're using your frames. You've got 3 levels of frames to use. There's palm frames with a stiff arm. There's forearm frames, which is generally just beyond 90 degrees. So you can load them on top of you. And the other one is head and heart. That's to stop them from getting the crossface and stop their ability to get chest-to-chest pressure once they've lowered their level and really getting into your space. So obviously it is in that order. So as they start to pass around, you're looking at hand frames or palm frames. And then if they beat that, then you go into forearm frames. And if they beat that, then you're into the last level of frames. Now, I just want to talk about the frames. The frames are a finite thing. You can't use frames all the time to control people. Your frame's job is to reinforce or create a bit of space for you to be able to get your biggest muscles into the fight, which is your legs. So you have to use your legs, your knees, or your hooks, either with using a scissor movement where you bring your outside leg over to the other side, or you get your knees in to do your basic knee escapes, to get back into the ability for you to go from defensive guard using your frames to get straight into offensive guard. Remember, if you're looking at what offensive guard could be too, it could be half guard, it could be closed guard, it could be open guard with groups. So it is all sorts of things when it comes to playing that offensive guard thing, anytime your ability to control your opponent and sweep them. Defensive guard is you're always going to make sure you've kind of on your hip, on your side, waiting for your opponent to kind of pass around, use your frames to reinforce, and get into your offensive guard. It could also be as they start to pass around, if you change the grips, you could be using like butt scoots or little sidewinders and things like that to escape, to get your legs and arms in front of the opponent, line up your center line, and then get your 4 points of contact. 4 points of contact, generally, that's a pretty broad statement, saying that as soon as you lose 4 points of contact, you need to get defensive guard. But it is important to understand that that's what you need to be worrying about. If a lot of people make mistakes of going to offensive guard and then staying at defensive guard, thinking that they can last minute try to sweep or use strength to try and pass somebody to, sweep them or submit them. And a lot of the times that doesn't really work. You'll make a lot of mistakes when it comes to that. The opponent will tend to be able to capitalize on that. That's when you should be switching to defensive guard and playing your frames, and you're getting your knees in, your hooks in. One of the other things with using your framing, you're trying to stop the opponent from getting into chest-to-chest pressure. Normally side control, it could be half guard, but normally side control or mount are the main ones. If you turn your back, obviously, then you should be thinking about doing Granby rolls and things. That's another way to play a defensive guard, but I would generally put those into an escape as opposed to a defensive guard, because you're kind of giving your back up. So yeah, you're trying to stop the opponent from getting down onto your chest, to get chest-to-chest pressure, using your frames to stop them. And one of the best things, you've got to look at what's coming first. It's always going to be their nearest shoulder. They want to get their nearest shoulder towards your neck and get that low. So palm frame's always going to stop that. Reinforce, be able to get the knee in. The next one, obviously, you have to look out for is them passing your hip line. So you've got to try and make sure that your knees are getting involved even before they start to pass around. It makes it very difficult. Looking at, say, not the running man escape, but the running man position, covering up that space. The last level to look at is our escape. So you've completely messed up. Your opponent has chest-to-chest pressure. They're on top of you. They've beaten your frames, and they're in what's called the space. And they've got cross-body pressure as well. So they're on the other side of your body. They're in the space on both sides. What I mean by the space is they are within the space between your hip and your armpit, in between there. So if you look at side control, someone holding you down in side control, all they're trying to do is get into that space and control you from that side. So they're in between your armpit and your hip. Your job as an escape is to use your framing to be able to bridge and then use hip movement or sidewinders, bridging and rolling in, or bridging hip escaping in, to be able to use your knees to get your frames in, to be able to escape from those positions. The idea of an escape is the person on top has the majority of the frames. Your job is to put the majority of your frames on the inside and then get back to a dominating position. And it always goes from, you're going from an escape to try to either get back on top, which is a different area altogether, playing a top game versus a bottom game, or you're getting into your offensive guard, playing your 4 points of contact with your controls. Like you could go an escape into half guard, you're escaping to butterfly, you're escaping to full guard. That's an offensive guard, but you started from a really terrible position from a, say, side control, or someone on top of you in mount. The idea is to shift from those positions. If you look at those three things, offensive guard, defensive guard, and escapes, the direction is always up. So if you're at escape, you're always going to try and go directly straight to offensive guard as quickly as possible. Obviously into defensive guard, then offensive guard. If you're in defensive guard, you're trying to go into offensive guard. It's always you're trying to get to a position where you have control from the bottom. And the sooner you realize that, the better you'll be. And at all points, you can sort of use your abilities to get your knees in and get back to an offensive guard. So yeah, playing the escape game, we obviously knowing that you want to stop your opponent from getting in between your hips and your armpits. That's really important. You want to stop them from getting chest-to-chest pressure. So one of the ways you could do that is try and get on your side more and turn towards them, so they're putting the weight on your shoulder or on your ribs, as opposed to the flat where they're taking your breath away. Obviously, you have to be wary of them going from one position to another, say side control to mount, and if they go to mount, then you'll look at mount escapes. If you're in side control, you'll look at side control escapes. Those positions all have clear escapes and all have clear things that you would generally do, but the concepts always stay the same. It's always, they have the majority of the frames, you want to get your frames in, you want to get your knees in, and you want to get either to a full guard, closed guard, open guard, whatever. Doesn't really matter what you're getting to. You're just trying to get to 4 points of contact is what you're trying to get into. Sometimes you end up on their back, which is even better, or sometimes you go to, say, like a koala bear position. So a koala bear from an escape is more of another sort of area where you go from a bottom position to get to a top position. So that one as an escape is really, it's the main one I use from side control. So I'm looking for an underhook, get up, get onto the koala bear, get the leg tangle, knee tap and get on top, or use old school sweep. But if you look at what I'm trying to do with that, as I use that underhook, I get onto the one leg around theirs and I bring my other leg around. I've gotten them out of my space, so I've escaped. I've got my frames in. I've used my underhook as a frame. I've used my leg tangle as a frame. I've got positions of control. I've got the leg tangle, which could be seen as a half guard in some ways. If you look at the 4 points of contact, my hip or my knee on the floor could be seen as one point of contact. My leg tangle is seen as the other. My left hand, say if I'm going out to my left, can be seen as an underhook. That's another point of contact. So I'm at 3 points of contact. And then my fourth one, I'm looking at either grabbing the leg to roll under for old school, or I'm getting up on my knees, so you can see my knees as another 2 points of contact. It's kind of an interesting sort of way when you think about what could be a point of contact. As I said, a point of contact could be you on the ground. It could be your hand on the ground. I look at the hip bump sweep. The hip bump sweep, you don't really have 4 points of contact, but it's a sweep. It's irrelevant. This video is more for myself, just to go over the concepts, but I'm probably going to share this, so hopefully you guys get something out of it, and I hope that you don't mind my rambling. I'll talk about passing in a bit as well, but this will just be like a quick little 12-minute video on just some of the concepts. I will write a document up on this too, so everyone has it, and when I have it all fleshed out properly, it'll be really good. Okay,